What a great backcloth tonight. I thought it was really set the scene. Well, the woodcutter lived in a log cabin by the side of the river, and on the other side of the river was a forest. But locally, she was known as the witch. Well, who'd ever heard of a female woodcutter anyway? But she did odd things like making wild garlic and nettle soup. And she'd go foraging into the forest and pick all the wild mushrooms. Somehow she knew the difference between a wild mushroom and a toxic one. And she'd go back and make an omelette using the eggs from the chickens that roamed in the backyard. And she also made potions and lotions, things that would help you cure a cold or heal a wound. She'd forage, picking what we would call weeds, but she would call herbs and wild flowers. So you could understand why she was called a witch, but she wasn't a witch. She was just different, and the locals somehow didn't like that. And by the river, she'd built 2 poles, one at either side, and there was a rope sloping down towards the forest and a rope sloping back down towards the log cabin. And she had a little seat and she had a hook and she'd cross the river. There's a good reason why she did that. And hidden in the bush was her chainsaw and a little wheelbarrow and an axe. And as she got into the forest, she would start to cut the logs. And you could hear the chainsaw going zzz, zzz. And no other humans dare go to that part of the forest, because that's where the lion lived. Not even the other animals dare go to his domain. And the lion used to watch her cutting the logs. And they built up some sort of affinity. They couldn't talk to each other, but there was some sort of liaison going on. Perhaps you might call it a friendship. And he admired her bravery. She didn't seem to be daunted by this lion. And he looked forward to hearing the sound of the chainsaw going zzz. But he noticed it was 2-3 weeks and she'd not turned up. And he was getting worried. Was she ill? So he walked along the path by the river and he dived into the river to try and find where the woodcutter, the witch, lived. And luckily he got to the other side, because what he hadn't fully realised that there were alligators infesting that water. And he saw a log cabin and he thought, he had that second sense, he could see the smoke coming from the wood burner and he thought, that's probably where she's burning her logs. And he jumped over the wooden fence around the log cabin and he pushed open the door. And there in agony was the woodcutter, what the locals called the witch. And she was perspiring with a fever. And he remembered when his cubs were very young, when they got ill, he used to lick them. And somehow, miraculously, they recovered from their illness. So he started to lick the soles of her feet. And she was a bit delirious, but she thrashed her arms out and said, "Get away from me, you lion." She recognised who he was. It wasn't just any lion. And just wanted him to go away. And he felt rejected. He thought they'd got some sort of friendship. And he trudged away and made his way back to the river and dived into the water. Well, this time the alligators were waiting for him. And just as he got to the far bank of the river, one of the alligators just caught the heel of his hind leg, and blood sort of spewed out, but he managed to escape and hobbled back to his den in the forest. And strangely, the woodcutter, she did recover almost within a day or two. Perhaps it was the licks from the lion. Perhaps it was a magical way of recovery. And the following 2 or 3 days, the woodcutter, she returned to the forest and she started to cut the logs. And you could hear the noise, zzz, but the lion didn't appear. And she went cutting logs for a further week or two, and she was a bit worried about the lion, where he was and what he was up to. So she went in search of him. She didn't normally dare go too near his den because he'd want to defend his territory and probably attack her. But she saw him just laying on the ground, obviously feeble and sweating. And she went up to him and attempted to wipe away the sweat from his head. But he just turned away and rejected her. And she understood why, that perhaps their friendship was no more. And she heard in her head the words of her wise grandmother. And the words were, "He who breaks the thread of friendship can never rejoin it as once it was before." Thank you.